Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. Now, if you've seen my video, it would have been a couple weeks ago now, I'm guessing, because it's actually being filmed the same day, but I think it'll be a couple weeks. I'm going to turn a salad bowl, and this is a wedding present, and I want to turn, well, this will be the biggest bowl I've ever turned. So if you watch my roughing out video, this was a piece of elm that I roughed out, and now I'm just screwing a faceplate on what's going to be the top of the bowl so that I can shape the outside, get it round, turn a foot on it, and then rough out the inside. And then we're going to put it in the kiln, let it dry for a couple weeks, and then finish it. So I put as many screws in this as I can. In this case, I just pre-drilled them and then put the screws in. This will hold up to 10 screws. I think on this one I only put 5. It's not that heavy and it's fairly round. Alright, so I turned it on and it's actually fairly well balanced, even though it was just roughed out with a chainsaw. I can turn it about 300 RPMs right now. That's plenty fast enough to get it, to turn it and get it round, which will allow me to speed up even further. What's holding me back now is because it's not perfectly in balance, I can't turn it fast. It's also very heavy, so I'm pleased with the fact that I can turn it that far. The other thing is this log has been cut over a year and was just sitting out, and I don't have any cracking in it, which is good, and the moisture is about 25%. So typically when you cut down a tree, it'll be about 50, so it has dried some, so that's good news. So I'm going to rough it out, like I mentioned earlier, and then put it in my kiln. So it shouldn't take that long being at 25, so I'm fairly pleased with that. So we'll go ahead, bring the tailstock up, and get turning. Doing here, and is always a good practice, is to give it a spin by hand first, just to make sure that when that turns around, that piece, that it's not going to hit your tool rest or your lathe bed or anything else that you don't want it to hit. And I also bring up the tailstock just to hold it in place. Even though it is screwed on, that just gives it some extra support for safety. That's just a little over 200 RPMs there now, but it's turning fairly well balanced, so we'll knock some corners off it. So that previous clip, I don't always show that, but that was at real time with the volume up. I just wanted to give the viewers a sense of how quickly or slowly it is when you're first turning it and knocking those corners off. In this clip, I'm going to speed it up a little bit more, not only the playback speed, but also the lathe speed, because as I turn it round, every time it gets a bit more round, I can increase the speed, which improves the ability for me to remove those corners a little bit quicker. In this clip, I've sped the lathe up. It's now 300 RPM. And again, it's getting more and more round all the time, which is what's allowing me to bring that speed up and allowing me to remove more material quicker. It's been about 20 minutes, half hour. And I got it round. So that means two things. Number one, now the bevel, which is here, can ride up against the wood in a continuous fashion. So I don't get that air, wood, and it's a lot smoother and it cuts a lot better. So that's number one. And number two, I can turn the speed up, which will help me as well. So both things are going to work in my favor. I was up to 400 RPM. You can see now that it's round and I'm riding the bevel, I'm doing a push cut starting at the bottom and just pushing the bowl gouge up the side of the bowl. And you can see I'm removing a fair amount of material fairly quickly. So here it is. The outside is rough finished. I put a large pedestal foot on the bottom. I'm going to use hot melt glue as a means to secure that. Wet wood, it's hard to get a 10 in it, especially with a bowl this size. I think it would just break off. But I want to point something out here. Now, I wanted to maintain as much depth in the bowl I could, but here's the center of the pith. And the pith, if it's going to crack, it's going to crack at the pith. And sure enough, it has. I could cut it down to here, which would get rid of the pith. But at this point, I think I'm just going to put a bit of glue in that, which will stop it from spreading, hollow it out, and try and save the depth of the bowl. I may not. I may have to cut it down to there. It's still a good sized bowl. This side of the pith hasn't cracked at all. So for now, I think I'm just going to put some glue in it to prevent it from getting worse, and then rough it out and see what happens as it dries. Again, it was already 20%, so I'm a little surprised to see this crack as quickly as it did, because I think it's happened since I put it on the lathe, although maybe I just missed it from before, because it seems to be along here as well, and I did see this piece. So, not sure whether I missed it or whether it's done it since I put it on the lathe. Okay, I've pretty well hollowed the inside out. I'd have to get rid of this center stem, so I'll do a little more cutting on that. And then once I get rid of that, I'll just take the bottom a little bit deeper. The walls are good. They're about as thin as I want to go for now, because it does have to dry and it may warp, and then I won't have enough material to thin it out. So a little bit deeper, and I'll get rid of this center stem. It's 15 inches in diameter, and it's going to be 7 inches deep if I can keep the pith. So right now it is just over an inch thick. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this in my kiln, and I'll probably leave it there for 3 weeks. And then I'll put it back on the lathe and finish it. It's got a pretty good surface now. It's pretty smooth, but I'm going to have to turn it twice, because as it dries, I'm assuming it'll move. Although there's only 22, 23 moisture, so it may not move a lot, but we'll see when it comes out of the kiln. I know it may sound fancy when I say I put wood in the kiln. Here's my kiln. It's a cardboard box with a light bulb as a heat source, with a tinfoil heat shield on the outside of it, and a USB powered fan pulling air across it. But this works effectively well at bringing the moisture down. In a week, I was able to bring it down from 23 down to 15 to 12. So I've taken this bowl out of the kiln. It was in there for almost a week, and you can see it's got some checking in it. These cracks that you see that are running kind of perpendicular to the grain. They're stress cracks. As it dried unevenly. The good news is that these cracks don't go all the way through. There's nothing on the inside. So a lot of these will be turned away. What's not, I'll fix up with some glue and some shavings. You'll never notice that they were there. This is why we twice turn bowls. Normally what should have been done, or what could have been done to minimize this, would have been dried a little bit slower. In this case, it's a gift, and I needed to turn it around on fairly quickly, so I did have to dry it a little bit quicker. The other thing you'll notice is that it's gone out around. It is pretty well touching here, but if you notice here, it's out at least 1/4 of an inch, if closer to maybe 3/8. So that's how much it's gone out around in the last week while it's been drying in the kiln. So that's why I left it thick. It's an inch thick. So I'll be able to turn this outside down and get it round, and then we'll be able to finish it from there. So in order to make this bowl round again, I just start at the bottom with my bowl gouge. Using the push cut, I work my way up the side of the bowl. It gives me a good finish, makes it nice and smooth. You can see the shavings coming off quite easily here and accumulating quite quickly. So once I come up the side of the bowl, this should be round. Right now it is not, but by the time I get to the top, it will be round. The good news is that 90% of those checks we saw are gone, so that's good. I have some still down here at the base. The majority of those will be turned away too when I turn the foot. I think I'm going to leave the outside now and just see what it takes to get the inside smooth, and then if I have the opportunity, I'll take more from the outside. Again, I want to maximize what I take from the outside to get rid of any remaining checks that are left in the wood. Normally, I would finish the outside of the bowl completely, including finishing, and then switch to the inside, but in this case, I want to just make the inside round and maximize the outside. There, that edge there is just catching it there, and it's taking more obviously there. So that's where my inside's going to be, and yes, I will be able to take some more on the outside. So yes, using my carbide, I was able to establish my rim. I'm taking the minimum amount right there and the maximum amount right there. So that's good. That's how much I need to take out because it needs to be round. And then I'll come back and go to the final thickness on the outside. When doing the inside of the bowl, I always start up at the rim and work my way down towards the bottom. Again, here you can see I'm using my gouge. I use the bowl gouge for the majority of this bowl. And I just establish the rim with that push cut and then use that coming down the side of the bowl. I didn't show it all, but here I started with some sheet paper at 80 grit, and then I worked my way up with power sanding up to 400. With the sanding complete, now it's time to apply the finish. In this case, I did use my abrasive paste in order to get it smooth, and then I applied Tung Oil. Now, because this is going to be a salad bowl, obviously the finish has to be food grade safe, and Tung Oil is. With most finishes, natural finishes, they will be food grade safe once they've cured, which depending on the finish could take a couple days to up to a couple weeks. The volatiles in the finish have to come off, but once that's done, then they're food grade safe. Here I use a combination of my carbide tool as well as my bowl gouge, just to remove the tenon on the bottom of the bowl and to create a little bit of a decorative recess where I will engrave my logo. Here's the bottom of the bowl finished, no finish applied, and just waiting for the engraving. So here's this week's project. It's one of the biggest that I've done so far to date. It's a salad bowl. It's 15 inches in diameter. It's a piece of elm, and it's about 6-7 inches deep. I've also engraved my logo on the bottom. It's a nice salad bowl. It's nice and heavy. It's got some beef to it for sure. And it's got a food grade finish on it. So hope you enjoyed this video. Now with my new lathe, I'll be able to do some bigger pieces. I have a bigger piece on the lathe as we speak. So this is a commission piece for a friend of ours, and I hope she enjoys it. I actually did 2 identical bowls, but only one video. But one bowl was for a wedding gift, and another one was for a birthday. Hope you enjoy.